So
This
is kind of our Prince segment, which will start with the Prince of Broadway, then segue into Sense of Occasion. Now, it is not unheard of to have a retrospective on Broadway.
No.
Jerome Robbins had Jerome Robbins Broadway.
Sondheim.
We had a Sondheim.
Several Sondheims, side by side,
Yes.
and the other one as well, yes.
And of course, Bob Fosse, which combined.
Of course.
But this is a little different in that it is the work of a producer-director.
Yep.
And whereas when you do a composer, you're singing the song, you obviously.
Right.
When you do a choreographer and you're doing his dances, you know what he did.
Right.
When you're doing a director and you're only showing a sliver, you don't necessarily, you can't really understand the.
How
in
you
many
choose.
cases, how you
what
choose,
is the process?
or what his contribution was, or especially with a producer.
Right.
We have a wonderful scene in this Roof from Fiddler, which Prince produced, and
And
so
did
what do
not
you do?
direct.
Did not.
not
Jerome Robbins
direct,
directed it. How do you show his contribution? Do you bring out the ledger,
Yeah.
or you just let the work speak for itself, which is a lot of what is done. Now, Prince has had an amazing amount of work over the years, and in fact. Some of
he's
it
had an equal number of flops to his number
Right.
of hits. And that, I think, is what is missing in this. I know he talks about a couple of them. I know he even shows Superman. Which,
well,
and we
no,
don't need
there's a song from Superman.
Well, yeah, we don't need to. And it's a
It's
great
a bird,
song.
it's a plane, it's Superman.
It's a-
Yes.
but the song that they puts into it is "You Got Possibilities" is a great
Oh,
song.
wonderful. And beautifully staged.
Absolutely.
By
And beautifully staged, and that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a hit or miss kind of thing. And there's no point. There's no other than sequentially, other than by year. Chronologically, there's no storyline. Everybody comes out wearing. This is not an homage to Hal Prince. My wearing my glasses on my head. It's an homage to my father.
Actually, it's not even done in sequence.
Oh, okay. I thought it was.
Nope.
Okay.
They have Sweeney Todd after Merrily
You're right,
Parade
you're
and
right, you're
Spider
right.
Woman.
Okay, you're right. Maybe that's where it fit better. But so that's what they did. They put the songs in, but it did begin as a sequential. In the beginning, this is what we did.
In the beginning.
Right. And the point that I was going to make was only that there are a couple of things here. First of all, I don't know that Prince is the best person to choose what's the best of Prince, because
Well, Susan Stroman co-directed this
yes,
with him,
she
so
did, but
she was.
I don't know how much she had to do with the choosing of the material, because even within the shows that we saw, I was very disappointed in the musical numbers that were chosen very often. In the She Loves Me, I know Ice Cream is maybe overdone, but boy, that's the number I want to hear. And they had a voice or two in there that could have done
yes.
it, And I was going to say, so everybody comes out as they just wear Prince glasses on their
Right.
heads. I said, this is not an homage to him; it's an homage to my father. But
Okay.
but while that
Your father wore his glasses on.
on his head always, my father looked like Harold Prince.
Okay.
He looked just like this on the cover. That's what my father looked like. So yes, all right.
All
Well,
right.
but I always do it because that way, if I need them, they're there.
Okay.
And they
That's
act as a
probably
hairband.
why he does it.
And they act as a hairband. Well, he does it also because it hides part of the fact that he's bald.
Okay.
That's what my father did. Anyway, getting back to the show.
Yes.
So that was the only sense of continuity that there was aside from the fact that he directed
And they really don't do much of it. Now, I guess if they were going to talk more about his process,
Yeah.
they might have had to cut a couple of numbers out, and I guess the assumption is people would rather see the songs
Okay.
than hear somebody talking about them. And there is some logic to that.
Absolutely.
But I would have liked to have gotten a little more from the show itself about, well, how did he come to that? How did he get
There were
to the-
anecdotes.
get
There
to
were a
this
few
number?
anecdotes about what it was like to work with David Merrick and
Right.
that kind of thing, but you
But
couldn't
not-
possibly
not
do
t-
without. But not much, not enough.
Not much.
Not
and
enough.
in Showboat, for example, they staged two very nice numbers from Showboat.
Didn't need to.
But the problem is, and why they changed the lyrics to Old Man River, they didn't use the original ones. I don't
It's
understand.
PC. We're updating it so that certain words are not used. I'm sorry, Charlie. That's the way of the world. We're
But
gonna take down the
they took
Columbus
out the
statue.
lyric, "I'm tired of living and scared of dying." I don't know how that's un-PC.
That's not. But
I mean, in his book,
yes,
I think he takes issue with the fact that in Zorba, a revival, they changed the song from "Life is what you do while you're waiting to die" till "Life is what you do till the moment that you die."
yes.
So
and Zorba was not featured in the
no,
show.
Zorba was
now,
not.
Here's
featured
what was
in the
not
show.
featured. Okay,
Yes.
Baker Street. I would have loved to see. I found in my collection of stuff I never should really have. Ray Jessel once did a show of his songs. Ray Jessel wrote Baker Street. Baker Street was an enormous flop, as I understand. But I mean, I never got to see it.
And so was Merrily We Roll Along, which
I did get to
is
see.
represented here. And done. They took a song out of one of the major numbers, and they maneuvered it in a whole new way with, let's see, Emily Skinner.
Oh, we should talk about the cast, because the cast
Emily
is
Skinner I
phenomenal.
barely recognize, because I think she's slimmed down quite a bit, and I guess she must be wearing heels because she looks taller.
I don't think she slimmed down. She was always slim inside, so she was very slim.
Right, but in subsequent shows, she was a little, shall we say, curvier.
Okay. But
on that. And ironically, I just saw Alice Ripley a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, who is? All right, so we have Chuck Cooper, and we have Emily Skinner, and we have Brandon Uranowitz, and Tony Yazbek, and Karen Ziemba, and then we have some lovely other kids.
Some of whom are Prince veterans.
Yes, and then Janet DeCal and Breonna Parham, and Michael Xavier. I think that's about it. And everybody doubles and triples and does things. Okay.
Right.
You mentioned Merrily We Roll Along.
Yes.
Where Was Old Friend? My favorite song from if they're going to play a musical thing about Merrily We Roll Along, Hey Old Friend is those are the notes that make me know, oh my God.
Again, you know what? Everybody who sees this show has their favorites. I would have liked to have seen more of Pajama Game. They basically play a few bars off stage.
There's nothing.
I would have liked to have seen Candide, which Prince has revisited more than any other.
Yes, and I would have liked to have seen Flora the Red Menace, which I don't know anything about.
But it's a decent selection. What I miss here is, again, the process. Like I got sidetracked with Showboat, but the big deal about Prince's Showboat was this hurricane that he and Stroman staged, showing the passing years. Right. And I'm sure it was just too much to do for this production. But otherwise, basically, what we saw could have come from any production of Showboat.
Right.
And we really
on the road
can't see Prince. Now,
again.
Also, he does Phantom, which is obviously still playing. It's 30 years this January. I have not seen it since it opened. I hope to see it again. But God, sitting through the number that they did in this production, I hope it flows better in the actual production, because I felt like I was sitting for 30 years. Boy, did that go on long.
And the only song I went out whistling was, or thinking about, and the next day humming, was from Follies. Not one of the major numbers from Follies. It was The Right Girl was the number.
Right. Yeah.
And but see, Follies is done. It's such a big show. It's the ghost of the Ziegfeld Follies.
Right.
And so when you have one girl come out and walk down, and I thought, well, that's how I would stage it in Summerstock. That's exactly what I would do, And it's sad. And I don't know. I mean, obviously he wanted to do this just the way he wanted to write this book. It's a legacy.
Yes.
And because the other shows were not. Fosse didn't do Fosse.
Yes, it did.
No, Fosse was not alive when Fosse was done.
So Anne Rinkin, I think, and Gwen Verdon.
Yes, but it's a legacy.
But Robbins did Jerome Robbins Broadway.
Yes, Robbins did Jerome Robbins. But and Sondheim was alive when Sondheim was done, but he didn't do it. He gave permission.
Well, he also appeared in it on videotape.
On videotape. But this guy directed the show with Susan Stroman.
Yes.
So this is what he wants us to see.
Yes.
So we can't blame anybody else,
Right.
And then, if we want to, I'm ready to give points, where points are due.
Okay.
Which is to say, I would give it. It was like a really good drama school audition piece.
Ooh.
In the sense that everybody got big numbers to do. Chuck Cooper came out and did a fantastic Tevye. We would never be cast as Tevye, so it was great to see.
Maybe he would in this day and age. He also did Old Man River. Now, what would have happened if they had a white actor doing Old Man River? They've got a black Tevye.
Frank Sinatra sings Old Man River in some 1940s.
There you go.
So, if you can believe that.
No, but all right.
In a white tuxedo, he sings it. I have it blazoned in my memory.
Well, I guess it's been done, so they didn't need to do it the original one.
No, we didn't see it here. He didn't do anything here. Why? That was Chuck Cooper could have done the hell out of one of those songs.
You know what?
I know.
Everybody is going to come and say, oh, I wanted to see this.
But that being said.
But there is no way you can include everything he's done.
Okay, and that being said, you want to see everything he did, read the book. It's all in the book.
Well, it's basically, this gives you, normally I think a play should stand on its own, but I think this is a wonderful companion, because you'll understand what he was thinking, what he felt about with this book. This is basically a book that he wrote, Contradictions, in 1974.
This is a companion
and the
piece
first half, the first half of this book is that book, plus
a couple of things that
his
I find very
reflections
interesting.
40 years later. And certain mistakes that he admits he... Well, here's what I've done since I wrote it. Show that he directed on Broadway. And if he had waited 6 months, he could have had Julie Andrews and he says, you know what, with all respect to, due respect to Barbara Cook, I should have waited. Hal, you're right, you should have waited. And then he wonders about the show. He says, I may be biased because it was my first. Hal, my opinion, it's one of the best shows that you ever did. I didn't see your production because I was 3 years old, but I've seen the Roundabout productions. And She Loves Me is a marvelous show. I never have understood why it hasn't gone further.
That's a personal thing. Now, I mentioned that I was
that's a
going to say
professional
something
thing.
about Curvy. James Goldman was the co-writer with his brother on Follies. So, this is one of those things where you can go around and around, and the name dropping in the book.
It's a long curve.
It's a long curve. There are only a couple of photos. I would have wanted 25% more photos.
I would have liked at least that much, but I found it to be a very informative, very interesting book.
I love the book.
I could give that 5 playbills. I was surprisingly, I kept hearing about it and I was thinking, oh, it's got to be amazing, but it wasn't. And part of what he writes in the book is that I'd rather do a show with low expectations, because if you do a show with high expectations, and everybody had to be having high expectations of this show, and inevitably it's
not
let
inevitably
down.
because
that's true.
the Sondheim show was brilliant, and it was done on cubes, and it didn't have to have 40.
I think it was better done than this, but I was.
But you didn't have to try.
Jerome Robbins, I think, was the epitome.
Yes, I agree with you, but you didn't have to try to rebuild the sets. He took more time rebuilding the sets. If he just had people come out to do the numbers, he could have done twice as many numbers. Yeah, that's just okay. So what did you give it as a? I give the book again. I give the book 4.
I give the book 5, and I give the show 3.5.
I give the book 4.5, and I give the show 3.5, and I give it because he cast it very well. I think he put some brilliant people in it.
When you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too,
on the aisle.